The new lawsuit over a show called The Case of JonBenet Ramsey. JonBenet's brother is now suing CBS for $750 million. He claims the network falsely implicated him in his sister's murder. ABC's Clayton Sandell is in Boulder, Colorado with much more on this story. Clayton, good morning to you.
Hey, good morning to you, Dan. Yeah, police here in Boulder never solved JonBenet's murder, but now a documentary that claims to know the real killer finds itself the target of a huge new lawsuit. This morning, JonBenet Ramsey's brother Burke is suing CBS for defamation over a documentary that he says falsely accuses him of murdering his own sister. Burke was 9 when 6-year-old JonBenet was found strangled in the family home 20 years ago, a story recounted in the 4-hour program that aired in September, The Case of JonBenet Ramsey.
I sure know I'm like going sicko.
According to the lawsuit, the show was touted as a complete reinvestigation of the case and accuses Burke of being the killer.
Out of anger, he may have struck her with that flashlight.
I think we all agree on that.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Sure. Yeah, I agree with that. However, see, it's not the intentional murder.
Firing back in new court documents, Burke accuses CBS, a production company, and several experts who appear in the program of fraud, calling it a fictional crime show based on a theory from a self-published book that had been rejected by law enforcement. Burke's lawsuit says the show was negligently published with a reckless disregard for the truth. Burke himself spoke out for the first time this fall in an interview with Dr. Phil.
Some people have speculated that your parents weren't protecting you, they were hiding you.
For the last 20 years, I wanted to grow up like a normal kid.
His lawsuit seeks $750 million in damages.
CBS has taken a young man and they have falsely branded Burke as a child killer since age 9, and he will live with the impact of that accusation by CBS for the rest of his natural life.
In 1999, the DA officially cleared Burke as a suspect. In 2008, a second DA cleared the entire family. And earlier this month, investigators announced they'll be using new DNA technology to test some evidence again, hoping it leads to the killer. And we did reach out to CBS. They did not want to comment. Dan?
Clayton, thank you. For more on this, let's bring in our legal analyst, Ariva Martin, who's in our Los Angeles bureau. Ariva, good morning to you.
Good morning, Dan.
So does Burke Ramsey have a case here?
This is a really complicated lawsuit. The first issue is veracity. In order for Burke to prevail, he has to establish that the documentary and its conclusion that he's the murderer was utterly false. Then the issue becomes knowledge. Did CBS know that it was producing a story that was false and did so anyhow? We know this lawsuit claims that CBS is reckless, and that's going to be the burden of proof on Burke to establish that recklessness. So really complicated, particularly given that 2 district attorneys have cleared the family, including Burke, based on the evidence that's been tested so far.
If this goes to trial and doesn't settle, does that mean we could actually see evidence and testimony submitted in court about who killed JonBenet?
That's a good question, Dan. Because we haven't had anyone brought to justice, there's been no trial with respect to anyone related to this case. In this defamation action, we could have a mini trial of sorts based on the evidence, as Burke would try to establish that he, in fact, was not the killer. And in order to do so, he would have to put forth evidence suggesting that someone else committed the murder of his sister. So we could see this case played out in terms of the murder trial of JonBenet in this defamation lawsuit.
This is a $750 million lawsuit. That's a huge number. Is it realistic?
That is an incredibly huge number, Dan. But think about the Hulk Hogan lawsuit against Gawker. I think it was about $140 million that the verdict came in from the jurors in that case. So we've seen substantial verdicts in these cases. So if Burke is able to get past liability, the question then becomes about punitive damages. And we are talking about CBS, really deep pockets, a huge net worth for a media company. So if Burke is successful, we could see substantial damages in this lawsuit.
Ariva Martin from Los Angeles. Thank you, Ariva.